Emma Collins had always been someone who moved through life with quiet grace, steady at work, polite with friends, gentle with strangers. But for the past few weeks, her world felt heavier than she wanted to admit. Her breakup, though mutual, had shaken her more than she realized. She had thought ending the relationship would bring relief. But instead, it left behind an empty space she didn't know how to fill. On that cold Seattle evening, she didn't want to go home to her silent apartment. So she stopped at a small lakeside cafe she often passed but rarely visited. The sign glowed softly, the kind of light that made the whole place feel safe. A little warmth, that was all she wanted. Inside, soft jazz filled the room, blending with the quiet murmur of customers. Emma ordered her usual tea and stood near the window, watching the dark lake reflect the city lights. She tried to push her thoughts away, but the silence within her felt louder than the noise around her. She found a long wooden table near the back and set her drink down. The cafe wasn't big, and soon all the seats were taken except for the ones beside her. She didn't mind. She wasn't looking for company. She just needed a moment to breathe. But life rarely follows what we expect. The door opened again, and two men walked inside, both strangers, yet somehow impossible not to notice. They weren't together in the typical sense, but they arrived within seconds of each other, their steps falling into a natural rhythm as if they'd known each other for a long time. The first man, Daniel Reed, looked like he was carrying quiet stories in his eyes. He had a steady presence, the kind that made people feel safe without him trying. His calm gaze scanned the cafe, searching for a place to sit. The second, Liam Hart, entered with a brighter energy. His smile seemed natural, the kind that didn't feel forced or too confident. He nudged Daniel's shoulder lightly, as if he was attempting to break a silence only he could see. Emma didn't know why they drew her attention so quickly. Maybe it was the contrast between them. Maybe it was the loneliness she felt that made her notice anything warm or familiar. Or maybe it was something deeper, something she wouldn't understand until much later. The cafe had filled up quickly, and the only seats available were the two at Emma's table. Daniel approached first, his voice calm but respectful. "Excuse me," he said. "Would you mind if we sit here? It seems everything else is taken." Emma nodded almost instantly. "Of course. Go ahead." Liam smiled warmly as he pulled out the chair. "Thank you. I swear we didn't plan to take over your space." Emma laughed softly, and even she was surprised by the sound. It felt like a small break in a long stretch of tension. The three of them fell into an unexpectedly natural arrangement in the middle of the long table. Daniel to her left, Liam to her right. It wasn't intentional, but it made the space feel balanced, as if the evening had arranged itself that way on purpose. Conversation began slowly, the way conversations between strangers often do. But unlike most small talk, this one turned deeper almost immediately. Emma didn't know if it was the atmosphere of the cafe, or the comfort of talking to people who didn't know her story, or simply the gentle way Daniel listened and the light-hearted way Liam responded. Whatever it was, she found herself speaking more honestly than she planned. Daniel was the first to comment on her mood. "You seem like you're carrying a lot," he said carefully. Not wanting to cross any lines, Emma looked at him, surprised. "Is it that obvious?" "A little," he replied with a tiny, almost apologetic smile. Before the moment turned to heavy, Liam added with playful ease, "Ignore him. He's dramatic. You just look like someone who had a long day." Emma laughed again, and that laugh felt different. It wasn't forced. It wasn't polite. It came from a part of her that had been quiet for far too long. Their conversation continued. What started with simple introductions turned into discussions about work, dreams, mistakes, disappointments, and the strange ways life surprises us. Daniel's comments were thoughtful, measured, and often deeper than expected. Liam's were warm, humorous, and full of energy that made the table feel brighter. For the first time in weeks, Emma didn't think about her breakup. She didn't think about the silence waiting for her at home. She didn't think about what she had lost. She simply existed in the moment, sitting with two strangers who didn't feel strange at all. Time moved quickly. The cafe as dim lights lowered slightly, signaling that closing time wasn't far. Emma didn't want to leave yet, and she noticed a similar hesitation in Daniel's eyes. Liam stretched his arms and looked at the two of them. "Do you want to walk outside for a bit?" he suggested. "It's nice by the lake at night." Daniel nodded. "It's quiet out there. Might help clear your head." Emma hesitated. Not because she feared them, she didn't. There was something in their presence that made her feel grounded, safe, understood. But the idea of extending the evening, of allowing herself to enjoy something so unexpectedly warm, felt new. Still, she wanted to. "Sure," she said. "I'd like that." They stood up, gathered their things, and stepped out into the cold night. The air was sharper now, but not uncomfortable. The lake shimmered under the streetlights. People walked by occasionally, but for the most part, the world felt still. The three of them walked with easy steps. Emma found herself again in the middle. Daniel quietly observant on her left, Liam warm and talkative on her right. Their presence felt balanced, like two different kinds of comfort walking beside her. Daniel asked her gently about her day, and Emma spoke about her job, the stress, the pressure. And finally, without planning the breakup. She didn't go into personal detail, but she shared enough for them to understand the weight she'd been carrying. Daniel listened carefully, nodding slowly. "Sometimes endings don't feel freeing," he said. "They feel heavy at first. But heaviness doesn't last forever," Liam added softly. "And sometimes you just need to meet the right people at the right moment to remember that." Emma felt something shift inside her. Not romantic excitement. Not sudden attraction. Something simpler, deeper, like relief. Like she wasn't alone in the way she thought. She was. They continued walking until they reached a small wooden bench facing the lake. Emma sat down without thinking. And the men sat to Daniel on her left again, Liam on her right, as if the positions had been chosen by something unseen. For a moment, the three of them simply looked at the water. The silence wasn't awkward. It felt natural. The wind moved gently, carrying the faint scent of pine and cold air. Emma breathed it in, feeling calmer than she had in weeks. She finally broke the quiet. "I don't know why I feel comfortable with you both," she said with a small, nervous smile. "We just met," Daniel answered with honesty. "Sometimes strangers give us the space we need to let ourselves breathe." Liam leaned forward slightly. "And sometimes strangers become important faster than we expect." Ma didn't know how to respond to that, but her heart reacted before her mind did. She felt warm. Not the kind of warmth that comes from romance or excitement, but something softer, a reminder that connection still existed in the world. When the wind grew colder, they stood up and began walking back. None of them spoke about exchanging numbers or seeing each other again, but there was a quiet understanding among them. Before they reached the cafe, Daniel stopped and took out a small piece of paper. "In case you ever want someone to talk to," he said simply. Liam didn't hesitate. He wrote his number too, offering it with a friendly grin. "And in case you need someone to make you smile," Emma accepted both numbers, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and curiosity. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know which of these strangers would matter more. She didn't know how deeply this night might shift her path. She only knew one thing: the loneliness she carried into the cafe didn't follow her home. Something had changed. Something had begun. And she could feel it. The night had deepened, and the lake glimmered under the pale glow of streetlights as Emma walked between Daniel and Liam. The air was crisp, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It had that quiet, electric feeling that sometimes made ordinary nights feel extraordinary. She didn't know why she felt drawn to both of them, strangers as they were. Daniel's calm presence contrasted sharply with Liam's warm, lively energy, yet neither felt overbearing. They moved together as if by some unspoken rhythm, and Emma sensed that tonight was the kind of night that could change everything. They walked along the lakeside, its path in silence for a while, letting the sound of water lapping against the shore fill the gaps. Emma felt herself relaxing, something she hadn't done in weeks. Her thoughts had been heavy all day, the lingering echoes of heartbreak clinging stubbornly. But here, between these two strangers, she felt weightless. Their presence made the world softer, simpler, more inviting. It was strange, almost magical. How people she had only just met could already feel like a kind of safety. Finally, Liam spoke, his voice cutting through the quiet. You know, sometimes life throws people at you in the most random ways. You never know which ones will stay and which ones just pass by. His tone was teasing but gentle, carrying a sincerity that Emma found hard to ignore. She glanced at him, noting the warm sparkle in his eyes, and smiled faintly. There was something comforting about his openness, the way he seemed to welcome honesty without judgment. Daniel's voice followed, steady and measured. And sometimes, he said quietly, they arrive just when you need to remember something you forgot about yourself. He looked at her directly. And for the briefest moment, Emma felt a flicker of understanding that went deeper than words. Daniel didn't try to charm or amuse. He simply observed, spoke thoughtfully, and somehow made the ordinary seem significant. Emma laughed softly, breaking the tension she hadn't realized she had been holding. I don't even know why I feel comfortable with both of you. We barely know each other. Her words hung in the cold air, almost like a confession. Daniel nodded slightly, acknowledging her feeling without pressing further. While Liam nudged her gently with a playful grin, sometimes you don't need a reason. Comfort just happens. Their footsteps carried them past trees, through the cool night, toward a small wooden bench facing the water. Emma found herself in the middle almost instinctively, Daniel on her left, Liam on her right. She noticed the difference immediately. Daniel's energy was calm, stabilizing, almost like a quiet anchor. Liam's energy, in contrast, was lively, warm, like a spark igniting little moments of laughter, even without trying. Each presence filled a part of her she hadn't realized was empty, one soothing her fears, the other reminding her of life's small joys. They all sat, and for a while the night held them in silence. Emma stared at the lake, its surface reflecting city lights like scattered jewels. The quiet wasn't heavy. It was soft, welcoming, like a pause in the middle of chaos. She realized how rare this kind of moment was, the kind that makes a person feel alive without drama, without expectation. She felt seen by both of them, in different ways, and it was disarming. Her heart had been locked for months, but here it was quietly nudged open. Breaking the silence, Emma spoke softly, almost hesitantly. I ended a long relationship recently. I thought I would feel free, but I just feel lost sometimes. She didn't elaborate, didn't want to burden them, but the words came out anyway. She realized that she wanted to share, even if only briefly. Even if only with strangers who might never see her again. Daniel tilted his head, his expression thoughtful but gentle. Endings are never easy. They leave a quiet ache, even when we know they are right. It's natural to feel unsettled. His words were simple but hit the mark. They weren't cliches. They felt real. He didn't try to fix her or offer empty advice. He just acknowledged the truth of her feelings. And that acknowledgement was comforting. Liam leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. Or maybe, he said quietly, you just haven't met the people who remind you what happiness feels like yet. Sometimes that takes time. Sometimes it happens unexpectedly. His words carried warmth, a promise without any pressure. Emma felt a flicker of hope she hadn't felt in months. The tension in her chest eased slightly. It was as if the night itself and the presence of these two men was telling her that she could let go of some of her worries. If only for now, the conversation drifted naturally, moving from shared heartbreaks to dreams they hadn't admitted to anyone else. Daniel talked about the challenges of his work, the quiet sacrifices he made for the people he cared about, the dreams he quietly nurtured despite the obstacles. Liam spoke of his family, small adventures he'd taken on his own, and the moments that had shaped him into someone resilient yet open-hearted. Emma shared bits of her life, to her struggles at work, the loneliness after her breakup, and her longing for connection. Each confession was met with empathy, without judgment, creating a fragile but beautiful trust between them. Time passed without noticing. The night felt longer than it was, stretching moments into memories. Emma realized she hadn't been this engaged in conversation in months. Daniel's calm presence encouraged reflection, while Liam's humor reminded her that life still held lightness. She didn't have to choose between them yet. She didn't even have to think about tomorrow. The night was theirs, fleeting and yet significant. Eventually, they decided to stand and continue walking. The air had grown colder, and Emma shivered slightly. Daniel reached out instinctively, offering his coat, but Liam laughed softly and said, "Don't worry, Emma. We'll keep you warm." The humor broke the momentary seriousness, making her laugh genuinely. She felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the cold that came from feeling cared for, even in small, subtle ways. They returned toward the street leading back to the cafe where they had met. The conversation turned lighter, more playful, but never losing the depth they had shared. Emma realized that something important had shifted within her. The loneliness that had seemed permanent felt lighter now. She didn't know how or why, only that the presence of Daniel and Liam had made a difference she hadn't expected. Before they parted ways, Daniel handed her a small folded note. "Just in case you ever want someone to talk to," he said. There was no pressure, no expectation, only the quiet offer of support. Emma felt a surge of gratitude. She accepted it with a smile, realizing that this simple gesture said more than words could capture. Liam, not wanting to be left out, offered his number too, with a friendly grin. "And if you ever need someone to make you laugh, or at least try, here's mine." Emma laughed softly, feeling a lightness she hadn't known in months. She tucked both numbers safely in her pocket, aware that they represented possibilities she wasn't ready to define yet. As she walked home that night, the streets empty and quiet around her, Emma thought about the night's events. She had met two strangers, shared parts of her life she usually kept hidden, and felt something stirring inside, a quiet hope, a gentle curiosity about what might come next. She didn't know which of these men, if either, would play a role in her future. She didn't know if they would remain strangers or become something more. But she knew one thing clearly. She didn't feel alone anymore. The night had given her something rare and unexpected: connection. Genuine connection, brief but meaningful. It had reminded her that even after heartbreak, life could surprise you with warmth, kindness, and the possibility of new beginnings. Emma felt her heart lighten as she reached her apartment, the cold Seattle air no longer harsh but invigorating. She realized that stepping into the night, letting herself be vulnerable, allowing two strangers to share her space, had changed something fundamental. It had reminded her that life, even in its quietest moments, had room for new stories, new emotions, and new experiences. As she closed her door, she glanced once more at the numbers in her hand. Each represented not just a person, but a potential path, a possibility, a choice yet to be made. Emma felt a thrill, not of romantic certainty, but of anticipation. For the first time in months, she was ready to embrace the unknown, ready to feel again, ready to trust that sometimes life delivers moments that matter far more than expected. And so, Emma sat by her window, looking out at the faint reflections of streetlights on the lake. She felt something she hadn't in a long time: hope. It wasn't loud, dramatic, or overwhelming. It was soft, subtle, and insistent, like the promise of a sunrise. And in that quiet, gentle way, it was enough. Enough to make her smile, enough to make her heart lighter, enough to make her believe that a single night with strangers could leave an imprint on her life that lingered long after they had gone. Emma didn't know what the next day would bring. She didn't know whether she would see Daniel or Liam again, or whether this night would be remembered only as a fleeting encounter. But she didn't worry about it. For the first time, she allowed herself to simply feel. To feel safe, seen, and unexpectedly alive. And that was a beginning, she realized. Quiet, beautiful beginning that no heartbreak could erase.